So I have a very important question for you. Marvel or DC? And I'm talking about the comic books and cinematic universes, both animated and live action. And yes, I know this is a very controversial question in the entire fandom community, and you may be wondering what kind of heathen I am for asking. Well, as a storyteller, I'm sort of obligated to go over the subject. This is Kat the Growing Daughter here at the Magic Library, and today we are going to be talking about the storytelling elements of Marvel and DC that are similar but also different. And I expect to be fully roasted in the comments for even making this video, but c'est la vie. Before we get started and everything, to all of my followers, I wish you a happy winter solstice, happy holidays, and Merry Christmas. I was going to do this video yesterday, but I was tired. I had just gotten back from doing two instances of back-to-back shifts, which was back-to-back, then back-to-back, and it was a really weird experience, and it was also draining. Also, Seraphim Awakening and Arboriah Lux are up on Amazon, and if you want to get the pre-order for Seraphim Awakening, go down to the link in the description below, and also the link for Arboriah Lux. Buying the paperback and the ebook are also down in the description below, so go check those out. But now let's get into the video and basically explaining why I'm doing this. Last week, as you'll recall, I did a video for the story of the 47 Ronin and basically honoring the day on which the 47 Ronin took their revenge against the council member who basically incited the Lord Asano to basically, commit ceremonial suicide. So there was that, and I also talked about the importance of that story. In this instance, we're going to be going back stateside and everything, and we're going to be talking about the importance of Marvel and DC and the impact they've had on our culture as stories as well as entertainment. And there's a few things you need to understand. The first one being that these are basically two sides of the same coin. Let the hate comments flood in saying that I know absolutely nothing, and in instance you are technically right. I did not do a lot of research on this. This is basically me just talking about something that I just like the entertainment story for, not the fangirl obsession part. So I've got to give a big shout out to my friend Joseph Newell, who lives up in Kingfield, Maine. He has been my friend for over 10 years, and he helped me understand a lot of the similarities and differences between Marvel and DC and how their stories are told. So thank you, Joe Noel. Happy holidays, Merry Christmas, and Happy Yule and Winter Solstice. Okay, so first let's talk about the stories as a whole. Marvel and DC are both fantastical because they're talking about stories and everything, but either of them differentiate from that one crux of originality. In the 40s and 50s, America was sort of wrought with the Second World War and the instances after, where all other global politic fights were basically fought. And in order to get people away from those crises of reality, they created superheroes. We get to see Superman, Batman, Captain America, Miss America, and a whole bunch of others. But after that and everything, we see sort of a divergence between the two. And And basically what that means is that while Marvel took a more fantastical approach, DC went to the darker side. And I'm not talking about Star Wars here. If you look at each and every one of the stories in DC, you'll find that each and every one of them do have a semblance of dark fantasy. But also they go deep into the psychological terrors that basically make DC one of the more formidable and probably more enjoyable aspects of animation and entertainment. I would like for you to go through your entirety of Marvel knowledge and see if there is in any instance where a supervillain kidnapped a hero and decided to jump his bones, or was killed and subsequently resurrected, or something much, much worse. DC is very good at setting aside psychological horror from the horrors of the darkness of the psyche. And you would think I'm sort of being repetitive there, but in all actuality, those two things are probably more alike than they are different, but there's different contexts. DC focuses on basically how trauma fractures the psyche and what happens to a person's moral compass, aka the Batman scenario. Every single Batman movie has some sort of homage to how Bruce Wayne got his start as Batman, or they just immediately go into it. Everybody knows what it is. Bruce and his family are in an alleyway for some ungodly reason, and then they are attacked by a thug that works for one of the bigger crime families. And there's the ripping of the pearls, there's the shooting of the father, there's the shooting of the mother, and Bruce Wayne, as a child, just sits there and watches it all play out. Completely catatonic. I may have mixed those up a little bit. I actually have not seen a Batman movie in a very long time, but you get the point. Bruce basically watches his parents die, and that changes him into the sort of cold and tactical person that he is now. We see him sort of head down a darker path to where he wants to plan his revenge, decides to come back to Gotham, and he sees basically darkness around every corner, and he doesn't want anyone to, and I'm probably being very, very wrong about this, he basically doesn't want anybody to go through what he had to. And of course, he becomes Gotham's Dark Knight. And let's just say that he sort of catches some flack for it. In more ways than one. If you look throughout all of the cinematic movies and everything, all of the live action movies and everything, you see that Bruce sort of spirals hard. If you look in some of the, there's several different instances where including in the Justice League and everything, I've just started rewatching the Justice League and everything, the animated show, and I don't understand how Bruce and Clark know each other. It's not explained, and it frustrates me to no end. I don't know if it's because it's said somewhere in one of the earlier Batman series, or what. I've been on a thing where I'm sort of picky about what I watch, so there's that. But Bruce's story sort of showcases that trauma changes the brain, and that that if we let it define us, we sort of become a darker version of ourselves. And the entire duality of Bruce Wayne and Batman it's a tricky fine line that even he has to be careful of. Now, hopping over to Marvel's side, you sort of see something similar to this in one of my favorite Marvel superheroes, Spider-Man. Yes, I know, I am terrified of spiders, but I love Spider-Man. It is a weird paradox, but I digress. Spider-Man gets his start, no matter what version that you see, is the death of a parental figure. He was raised by his Uncle Ben and his Aunt May. And when he first gets his powers and everything, and he sort of abuses them, his uncle says, with great power comes great responsibility. And at first he doesn't take those words into account until his Uncle Ben dies. Someone who is basically a father figure to him. And it was painful for him. He went on he did in fact spiral and to try to find the man who killed him. But once he did and everything, he remembered his uncle's words saying that great power comes great responsibility, and he knew that his uncle wouldn't have wanted him to go down this path. So he ends up turning him into the police, and he basically becomes a vigilante superhero, just not to the dark extent of Batman. These two stories are almost exactly the same, except that Bruce witnessed his parents' murder and was basically raised by the family butler, Alfred Pennyworth, and Peter Parker was raised by his aunt and uncle, and he still had his aunt with whom he had still a wonderful relationship. But that's basically that. The difference between these two characters is that Peter used that instance of getting his powers and the death of his uncle to basically be the man that his uncle wanted him to be. Batman, on the other hand, Bruce, on the other hand, basically, he basically, the trauma basically got to him and warped him to where he realized that even the law couldn't solve some certain crimes. They wouldn't hold criminals accountable because of corruption. In DC, you see a little bit of realism in what can happen in the real world, and in Marvel, you get a lot more fantastical. And that's where these stories sort of diverge in terms of quality, but at the same time, either side is still very, very enjoyable. So, for those of you watching, I actually did go around to almost every single Discord server I'm a part of, and I asked the question, Marvel or DC, and to react a bunch of the way. I will say this, a lot of people actually sort of lean towards DC than they did Marvel. Some said both, some said neither, because they don't like superheroes, I guess. But it was interesting to see what people thought about it. And I also asked some people who wanted to go into detail about why they like certain things, is that Marvel has good movies, whereas DC has good animated series. And with that, I actually sort of have to agree. Marvel's biggest moneymaker for the longest amount of time was the Avengers series and the standalones that sort of led to each movie. And all of it building up to the finale, which was Endgame, and then some of the epilogue movies that happened later. Now, that is an incredibly good amount of storytelling that sort of follows the group as a whole, but also finds time to focus on individual members. That is very good storytelling, primarily because you see how the effects that happen in those standalone movies affect the characters once they return with a group. Now, DC tried doing this with the Justice League movie, and it did not go well. DC is only primarily known for its Batman movies and its Superman movies. They tried and then doing the team franchise did not work out well. But recently they came out with Wonder Woman and I can't remember what the second one is. I want to say it takes place in the 80s, but I'm not sure because it's been a while. But seeing those two movies from a female hero's perspective and everything, and how she sort of lives life in the human world. I will say this. I'm not a big Wonder Woman fan, but I love what they did with the Wonder Woman movies. I mean, like they were intense, they were awesome. A little bit impractical because of the shoes that she was wearing, but I digress. She still looked amazing, and she was still a strong female character that a lot of women have sort of modeled their lives after. Now, you may be wondering why I'm liking the movies, even though they didn't do well. Well, each one has, the entire iteration of all the Batman movies, they do have some semblance of originality. It's basically but the thing about it is that it's basically rehashing the same story over and over again, which I don't mind. I mean, but it's almost the exact same problem that we have with the James Bond movies, is that they have different generations of James Bond movies because of the different actors that all play James Bond. But that, again, is beyond the point. I could go into the entire thing of Superman and Man of Steel and the work that Henry Cavill did, and then Jason Momoa doing Aquaman, and the woman who is the bane of my existence because I absolutely hate her. I will not name her here. But if you know about the trial that she was a part of because she defamed her ex-husband, then you understand why I hate her and her petty reasons. But again, that's beyond the point. Now, where DC sort of makes its money and sort of gains its popularity is actually through its animated series. In terms of animation, it's pretty crisp. Even some of the older stuff is very, very, very well drawn. And it's very well drawn in relation to the comics. I speak, of course, of Justice League and that particular series. And of course, who cannot forget the amazing opening sequence that they had for the Justice League. In the animated series. It will always warm my heart, and it will always bring me back to my childhood when I used to watch those episodes, and it was just it's just amazing. A more recent iteration of the Justice League is Young Justice, where it focuses on the sidekicks forming their own team and basically being a more covert operation under the Justice League. And of course, you see some of your favorites. You see the Dick Grayson Robin. You see Wally West as Kid Flash. You see, oddly enough, you see Calderon as Aqualad instead of Garth. But it's something weird that they did for this series, but it's still good. You see Megan Morse as Miss Martian. You get to see Artemis, the daughter of Huntress and Taskmaster. And you get to see a whole lot of others too. Blue Beetle. You get to see Tim Drake and Robin later on. You see El Dorado, who is a teleporter, and there's just a whole lot of stuff that happens in Young Justice that sort of you would have to follow the comics for, but at the same time you can look at the series, and the series, even though there's a huge time skip between seasons 1 and 2, it's still very, very well done. In fact, I am right now in season 3 of Young Justice, and I will say this: I know what happens and I know what happens, and it's gonna tear my heart to pieces when I get to some of those heartbreaking points. But I've got to watch it anyway. Either way, it's still a very good show, and I highly recommend it. I want to say you can watch it on Paramount. I think you could watch it on Paramount. And something else. I can't remember the name of it. But I'll look into it and get you guys some more definitive links. All in all, watching the Young Justice and watching the Justice League again and seeing how those stories sort of interact with each other, and at the same time they sort of diverge it's really, really interesting because, in fact, actually both universes do this sort of very, in both the Marvel universe and the DC universe actually tend to do this very, very well, is that their use of multiverses is intense, to say the least. You see a lot of the multi-dimensional aspect when you see the latest Spider-Man movie, Spider-Man No Way Home. And we see Peter Parker sort of struggling with people knowing about his identity and sort of dragging MJ and his friends into that drama. But it's interesting to see that some of our more beloved supervillains come back, and I say beloved supervillains in a very, very weird way but some of these are like very iconic. And I won't get into it if you haven't seen it yet. Just know that there are a lot of other people who sort of jump through those interdimensional rifts, and it's basically a battle of generations, and it's really, really cool, and it's really, really intense, and it's a wonderful movie, and it's so heartbreaking how it ends. I can't spoil it for you. You'll just have to go and watch it. But then again, that is a very, very good use of storytelling, and basically involving all generations and versions of all the Spider-Man movies. It was really, really, really well done. You don't get to see that a lot in the live-action movies when it comes to DC, but you do see that happen in some of the animated movies. There is a Flash movie that comes to mind. I can't remember it right off the top of my head. But that's definitely one to add. Whichever side you like the most, each one has its own way of telling their stories that is both impactful, and at the same time it really gives you pause on what a story does when it is told. Now, with all of the information that I've said, you are probably wondering why I went into so much detail and about these stories, and it's because when these stories first came out and everything, it was to give people hope. It was to basically tell people that no matter what background you came from, you can change the world, and you can be strong. Comic books are a very wonderful way to actually get started in the medium of storytelling. But sometimes, even if you want to go back for that nostalgic itch, you have to keep moving forward. Storytelling is meant to help us grow, and when these characters first came out and everything, they did help people grow. They helped people get through the incredible fear of a Second World War, of the global political consequences that came afterwards. Not to mention the other wars that happened after that. Seeing these heroes fight alongside soldiers in these other places, they gave people hope that we were winning in some scenarios. But at the same time, they sort of blinded us to the reality of the real world. And that's the only instance where I find immersion as sort of a problem, is that Immersion is only meant to be temporary. It's only meant to give your brain a bit of relaxation from the real world for a little while. Eventually, you have to come back to it. And I know that this is different from everything I've said in the past, but the thing about comic books is that I have no beef with comic books. I don't. I mean, like I said, they are a wonderful way to get children into the form of storytelling. But at the same time, you do have to move forward. Of course, I say this, and I've got literally a shelf load of manga that I have both read and not read at the same time. But that's more of something to keep my brain occupied and to give me a rest from reading like literally pages of text. But that's besides the point. I guess the point of this video is that Marvel and DC, from the point of view of storytelling, has changed our perspectives when it comes to how to view people. In a weird way. I mean, like I know I talked about the psychological damage of some of the characters in DC, and the more like inner strength and competence of Marvel characters. But at the same time, it's like there are very important lessons to be learned. Marvel teaches us that there is a semblance of good in people and there's also a semblance of bad, but we as people tend to lean more towards the fact that with enough goodwill that a person's good nature will come out. And in some instances that is true. Not always though. In DC, you see that people have this darkness inside them, and sometimes it does come out in possibly the worst amount of ways. But it's a struggle that the character has internally, and they don't really share it with others. And that in and of itself is more detrimental to one's mental health than actually helping. If there's one thing you take away from this video besides my abrupt lack of knowledge, or in-depth knowledge rather, of DC and Marvel, and it's that please be careful what you learn from these bits of nostalgia and these bits of storytelling. Don't get me wrong, they are very, very entertaining. Just don't try to model your life after some of these characters. And I'll probably get into that in another video. But these characters are not bad. Don't get me wrong, these characters are not bad. They're actually, in fact, very well written. Stan Lee and his partners and everything, they went very hardcore in how these stories were told. But at the end of the day, you do have to be careful. We want to believe that we are invulnerable as a species because we are very, very prideful, and we don't like getting reminded of the fact that we are in fact very, very fragile, and that we are susceptible to harm. And these heroes sort of give us the feeling that if we were in their shoes, everything would be better. But then we forget about everything that they've gone through in order to get that strong. Strength is about what you put into it. It's what failures you take to make you stronger. And I'm going to quote a line here from one of my favorite Disney Pixar movies, and it's that, and it's actually I'm going to do two, and it's from Meet the Robinsons. Aunt Billy says, "From failing you learn, from success not so much." And then the adult version of Lewis says later on that said, "Nothing is set in stone, you have to make the right choices, and if not, you keep moving forward." And that in itself is actually a quote from Walt Disney himself. So all that I can say is that with the stories of the past and how they're sort of depicted and brought into the world for a new generation, sort of revamped in a way, is that we can fall back on these as a crutch when it comes to wanting to inspire a new generation. But at the same time, we need to keep moving forward with these stories. We don't need a rehash of the death of Uncle Ben or the death of Bruce Wayne's parents. We need to get away from that. True, some new generations need to understand that that's how these people became who they are, but we don't need to take like an entire 15 minutes out of a movie to basically say that. Storytelling as a whole, from the first books that we read to the books that we read now, they shape who we are and they shape our understanding, but at the same time they sort of keep us grounded in a very odd way. They remind us of the sort of the horrors of reality and also the joys of it. They help us realize our inner strength so that we can, like Walt Disney says, keep moving forward. We, as a culture, sometimes rely too heavily on the past. There's nothing wrong with taking those stories of the past and bringing them into the future and sort of rehashing them for a new audience. But at the same time, if it's not broke, don't fix it. Yeah, I'm rambling at this point. I probably need to stop. I need to stop before I start contradicting myself on a sort of philosophical scale instead of a literary one. So with that, I think I will end it here. So this was a very, I've had a lot of time to contemplate about this. I was supposed to do this video yesterday, and I'm sort of glad I didn't. But at the same time, I probably could have done a little bit more in planning for this video, even though I don't plan any of mine. I like for things to be in the moment, and it's like I'm a discovery writer. What do you expect? Thank you guys so much for watching this video and for listening to me ramble about Marvel and DC. I really, really appreciate it. I'm also sorry if I ticked anybody off, but these are basically my opinions and my analyses of these stories and how they've basically shaped our culture. And if you have any comments about it, just leave them down in the comments. We can have a hearty debate, not a lecture, in the comments, please. If you liked this video and you want to see more videos about the history of storytelling and the different mediums of it, then leave your comments and suggestions down in the description box below. Please like, comment, and subscribe for more videos like this, and also ring that bell for more notifications. I know for a fact that some of you guys aren't ringing that bell. Ring the bell. Also, a little plug-in again, please, if you have not read Arboriah Lux yet before reading Seraphim Awakening, please buy Arboriah Lux. You can get the ebook and the paperback versions down in the description box below. And also same goes for Seraphim Awakening. It is available for pre-order. The ebook is, and you can find that link down in the description below. Besides liking, commenting, sharing, subscribing, and ringing that bell for more notifications in order to help me grow my audience and everything. Please, if you are interested in some merch, I have a link to my Printify store down in the description, and it's basically stuff that's for Arboriah Lux. Besides the Printify account, I also have a Ko-Fi account also down in the description, and it's basically for you to leave me tips. Either way, if you want to keep up to date with my writing progress as well as my social media presence, I have all of my socials down in the description below. I have an author page on Facebook as well as a writing group. I also have a Discord server that's basically just filled to the brim with people who are just absolutely crazy. I love them so much. And I also have a Twitter/X.com, an Instagram, and a TikTok. I have not been on TikTok in a while, but I need to. I need to do some more trailers and everything for the characters for Summer Awakening because the book is coming out in a few weeks. So I am very, very excited. All of that to say, I hope you guys have a very wonderful day. I hope you guys sort of correct me if I'm wrong with this video. I'm trying to look for more topics within the subject of history of storytelling, just to see how far we've come as a species. This is Kat the Growing Author here at the Magic Library, and I hope you guys have a very wonderful day, and Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and a Happy Winter Solstice. Bye guys!